Enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. On my way to offer incense at the temple, I was kidnapped by a band of mountain bandits. Their leader leered at me with a filthy grin and slammed a dagger straight into the table before me. If you don't obey, I'll slice the flesh off your maid piece by piece. My expression didn't flicker. I calmly pulled the dagger free and demonstrated 26 cuts, 32 cuts, or even 360 cuts. To prove I wasn't bluffing, I gave him a personal demonstration. My knife technique was masterful, each slice smooth and precise with barely any blood. The bandit chief was so terrified that he had his men escort me down the mountain that very night. He had no idea I was a transmigrated soul. In my previous life, I had been a specialized torturer and executioner in the darkest prisons. Hope you enjoy the story, everyone. The bandit chief had been grinning lasciviously. This maid has such fine, tender skin. She must taste delicious. One hand reached out to caress Chun Tao's face. Have you decided yet? If you don't speak up, this lord will do it himself. Chun Tao wept and begged. Young miss, save your servant. I narrowed my eyes and watched the pair for a long moment. Chun Tao was undeniably beautiful. If these bandits were truly driven only by lust, there was no reason they would target the mistress while ignoring the maid. Besides, though she wailed pitifully, I had interrogated countless suspects in my time. A single glance told me her fear was fake. Her eyes darted with hidden calculation as she secretly gauged my reaction. There was definitely something shady going on. I rose without changing my expression and pulled the dagger from the table. You want to carve flesh? I have plenty of practice. Shall I do 26 cuts, 32, or 360? This dagger wasn't my usual instrument, but it was sharp enough. What? Both the bandit chief and Chun Tao stared at me in shock. Want to scare this lord? You should look in a mirror first to see who you really are dealing with. The bandit chief recovered first, his face darkening. If you've got the guts, slice her right here in front of me. I'd like to see you try. Convinced I was bluffing, he ordered 2 underlings to pin Chun Tao down firmly. The first cut of lingchi must split the breasts as an offering to heaven and earth. Come, strip her clothes off. I rolled up my sleeves and commanded the surrounding bandits. Everyone exchanged glances, none daring to move. Only the bandit chief grew furious from shame. A woman who opens her mouth demanding to strip clothes and cut off breasts. Have you no shame at all? How interesting. These so-called mountain bandits don't behave like bandits at all. They act more like Chun Tao's own father. What game are you playing? Don't think you can stall for time. Before he finished speaking, my patience ran out. I stepped forward and slashed twice in quick succession. Whoosh, whoosh, carving 2 paper, thin slices of flesh from Chun Tao's exposed face. My movements were decisive, my blade work precise and merciless. By the time I lifted the 2 thin slices and placed them in my palm, Chun Tao still hadn't registered the pain yet. The entire room froze solid, eyes glued to my hand. Ah! Chun Tao was the first to scream, a sound so horrifying it raised goosebumps. Blood quickly welled from the wounds on her face. If she hadn't been so agitated, it wouldn't have bled so profusely. I had deliberately chosen the cheekbone, the area with the fewest blood vessels. The bandit holding Chun Tao released her in terror and staggered back several steps. The chief's legs turned jelly, he nearly collapsed. You actually did it? Weren't you the one forcing me? I regarded him with icy calm. No more nonsense. Either release us, or I'll keep cutting. Saying so, I advanced toward Chun Tao. She shrieked and scrambled backward on the ground in fear. Stop, my lady. I'll send you down the mountain immediately. The bandit chief's face was deathly white. He looked ready to drop to his knees before me at any moment. Oh, weren't you practically drooling with lust just now? This facial flesh is quite tender. Care to try a taste? I picked up 1 slice and dangled it before his eyes. Every bandit in the room began retching in unison. We were blind and failed to recognize a true master. We've offended the young lady this time. We beg your ladyship for great mercy and forgiveness. The bandit chief finally thudded to his knees. Chun Tao had long been in such agony she could no longer cry out properly. She collapsed to the floor, groaning ceaselessly. I tossed the dagger contemptuously to the ground in front of them. Find someone to apply medicine to stop the bleeding and prepare a comfortable carriage. With her current state, she probably can't even walk the path back. By the time lanterns were lit, I had been safely delivered back to the manor. My current identity was the second young miss of the Dinguo Marquis Mo family. The moment the legitimate eldest daughter Mo Jiao saw me return completely unscathed, her face drained of color as if she'd seen a ghost. How did you come back? I shot her a glance. Why, does big sister not wish for my return? Before she could respond, she spotted Chuntao being supported behind me, along with the terrifying scar on her face. What happened to Chuntao? I replied nonchalantly while looking at the half-dead maid. Chuntao was injured while protecting her mistress. I'll have someone tend to her properly. Mojiao's eyes widened and her mouth hung open, utterly speechless. My body feels exhausted. If big sister has nothing further, I'll return to my room first. I offered a slight curtsy and turned to leave. Back in my quarters, I dismissed all the maids, locked the door firmly, and stood before the bronze mirror to carefully study my reflection. The young lady in the mirror possessed delicate, refined features and a slender, graceful figure. Only her eyes, filled with the heavy weight of worldly hardships and bloodshed, clashed completely with that youthful, innocent face. I let out a bitter laugh. Who could have imagined that a torturer who had spent half her life in blood and darkness would end up transmigrated into the body of a pampered young girl who still smelled of milk? I only remembered being framed and murdered. I'd thought a person like me, with countless lives on my hands, would surely fall into the 18th layer of hell. Never did I expect to be reborn in this era. What was heaven's purpose in placing me in the body of a delicate young lady from a powerful noble house? A knock sounded at the door. Second young miss, the Marquise and Madame request your presence. I reined in my wandering thoughts, recalling the dangers I'd faced on the first day after transmigrating. The Dinguo Marquis manor might appear resplendent from the outside, but it was riddled with hidden schemes and undercurrents within. Marquis Dinguo Mo Feng, let me meet you properly. In the main hall, the Marquis and his wife sat upon the elevated seats. The Marquis's face was dark as still water. Suddenly, he slammed his palm down on the table. Rebellious daughter. Kidnapped by mountain bandits and you didn't even report it to your parents. How do you still have the face to return home? When I had taken over Mo Yuna's body, the original owner had just breathed her last breath. It was likely she had chosen death on the road to the bandits to preserve her virtue. Madame Jiao pretended to dab at her eyes with a handkerchief. My daughter, mother knows you've suffered. But once a woman's chastity is lost, there will be no place left for her in this world. Such talk of virtue and chastity might fool naive young ladies who had never seen the world. But to an old veteran like me accustomed to rivers of blood and mountains of corpses, it wasn't worth a single copper. I laughed coldly. Mother, with which eye did you see that I was kidnapped by mountain bandits? Madame Jiao froze. Mother knows you're frightened, but how could such a matter be hidden? I adjusted my robes and spoke unhurriedly. Daughter truly doesn't know where mother heard such baseless rumors. On the way to burn incense, I did indeed hear that mountain bandits were active, so I hid in a nearby farmhouse for temporary shelter. The one who brought me back just now was a wealthy villager. His family had already driven the bandits away. When the bandit chief wanted to send me home, I stood rooted in place and refused to move. If he delivered me like that, wouldn't everyone immediately know I'd been taken by bandits? The bandit chief's face twisted with indecision. What exactly do you want, little ancestor? You're avoiding me like the god of plague. I don't know, I replied. In short, if you don't solve this, I'm staying right here. Returning home means no path to survival for me anyway. Cornered, his mind suddenly sharpened. He immediately descended the mountain, threatened a wealthy household in the nearby village, and forced them to escort me back to the manor, while claiming they had rescued me. He also warned that if they breathed a single word, he would raid their home every single day. That was why the steward and servants of the Marquis' manor had personally witnessed me riding in the wealthy family's carriage, escorted home by their female relatives. Father, you must properly thank that family on your daughter's behalf. The Marquis looked half convinced. Madame Jiao was too stunned to speak. Mo Jiao, who had been hiding behind the screen, finally couldn't contain herself. She burst out, "You're lying. I clearly saw your personal maid gravely injured earlier. How could you possibly be unharmed? I already told you." Chuntao was protecting her mistress, and I was a little impatient. She feared something would happen to me, so she changed into my clothes and lured the bandits away. Without her, I wouldn't have escaped so easily. On the way back, I stopped by to check on Chuntao. Her once soft, beautiful face now bore 2 horrifying gashes. After sprinkling medicinal powder on them, the sight was even more wretched than before. "Young miss, why did you act so cruelly?" Her eyes brimmed with bitter resentment. I gently adjusted the corner of her blanket, but the smile never reached my eyes. "A servant who kills her master deserves the death of 1,000 cuts. Tell me, are these 2 slices unjust?" Chun Tao's already pale face turned the color of ash. She stared at me in panic. "Young miss, this servant doesn't dare, it wasn't me." The real second young miss of the Mo family was already dead. If Chun Tao had taken part in the plot, she was the one who had killed her mistress. Perfect. In her trembling gaze, I saw my own face, smiling yet not smiling. Anyone who speaks nonsense will have their tongue cut out. So when the Marquise sent people to question her, Chun Tao swore up and down that she had changed into my clothes and led the bandits away herself. The bandits, in a fit of rage, had slashed her face. Only after the wealthy family's servants chased them off did she barely cling to her life. Father, with Chun Tao in this state, I'm afraid it will be difficult for her to marry in the future. Your daughter wishes to keep her in the courtyard for life, to nurture her and repay the kindness of saving my life. I lowered my head slightly, my voice laced with sorrow. Besides, Chun Tao clearly knows too much. I still need to interrogate her thoroughly. The Marquis's expression softened considerably. My daughter is truly kind-hearted, but keeping her in the courtyard for life, does that mean you won't marry either? Even if it's only a concubine, a servant is still a servant. Just reward her with some silver. Seeing the situation slipping away from her plans, Mo Jiao stamped her foot in frustration. How could Chun Tao have replaced you to lure the bandits away? Mo Yuna, you're definitely lying. I looked at her in feigned surprise. It seems Big Sister isn't only unhappy about my safe return. She actually sounds like she was hoping something terrible would happen to me. Mo Jiao realized her slip and hurriedly backtracked. Of course not. I was simply worried your reputation would be damaged and bring shame to the entire Dingo Marquise manor. Madame Zhao's face darkened. Yuna, after this incident your tongue seems much sharper than before. Today you've spoken rudely several times. I haven't settled accounts with you yet, but don't forget your place. Today I was too reckless. This old lady has already started to suspect. If anyone discovered I was a transmigrated soul, wouldn't they burn me alive as a monster? I needed to act more carefully from now on. I lowered my head and swallowed the contempt I felt for myself, forcing my emotions back down after a long moment. When I looked up again, my eyes shimmered with innocent tears. I gazed at the Marquise with the pure, helpless look of a sheltered young girl. Father, today your daughter was frightened out of her wits and acted rashly. Please punish me. But the mouths of outsiders are terrifying. Since I was lucky enough to escape unharmed, I believe this matter should not spread. If malicious people twist the truth, it will damage the reputation of our Marquise manor. I shot a meaningful glance at Mo Jiao. The Marquise pondered for a moment, then spoke sternly. Yuna is right. No one is to mention a single word of today's events. Understood? His final 3 words were aimed directly at Mo Jiao. The delicate eldest young miss turned deathly pale under that piercing gaze, swaying as if she might faint. She bit her lip and answered in a wronged voice. Yes, father. The moment the Marquise left, she stormed over and raised her hand to slap me. You cheap wench. How dare you sow discord in front of father? I caught her wrist mid-air, my grip steady as iron. Big sister, mother just reminded you, don't forget your own status. You are the legitimate eldest daughter of the Marquise manor. How can you act so wildly? If grandmother hears about this, you'll be beaten and put on display. She was stunned speechless by my stare. Only after I walked out the door did I hear her stamping her foot behind me. Mo Yuna, just you wait. I waited exactly as she wished, until midnight. Mo Jiao's method was simple. She sent a little maid sneaking into my room. In my previous life I had killed too many people, loyal officials and traitors alike. So I had countless enemies. I had long since developed the habit of sleeping with one eye open. The moment the little maid lifted my bed curtain and reached under the pillow, she met my dark, unblinking gaze. She screamed in terror and collapsed to the floor. Li Nan, who was on night duty, was startled awake. She rushed in and saw another of my personal maids, Xia Ju, sitting on the ground with a face full of panic. Xia Ju, what are you doing sneaking into the young Mrs. room in the middle of the night? Li Nan demanded, displeased. I sat up and pulled out a peach-colored embroidered sachet from beneath my pillow. On it, 2 naked figures were locked in an obscene embrace. Li Nan gasped and quickly turned away in embarrassment. Young miss, where did this filthy thing come from? If anyone sees it, even our lives as servants won't be spared. I stroked the sachet with interest, eyes fixed on Jiao. You should ask your dear sister here. Sneaking into my room while I slept, slipping this under my pillow. What exactly was your intention? It was you. Li Nan looked at her in disbelief. Jiao seemed to snap out of her shock. What nonsense is the young miss saying? This servant saw you sleeping restlessly and only came to check. How could I have placed something so dirty under your pillow? It seems the original owner of this body really was a soft persimmon through and through. Even the servants dared to bully her at will. If it wasn't you, why weren't you surprised or afraid when you saw it? Jiao was rendered speechless. Lying is a bad habit. I'll teach you how to be an honest person. Under the dim candlelight, I smiled in a way that looked positively demonic. My black hair cascaded like a waterfall over my shoulders, giving me an eerie, terrifying beauty. Jiao couldn't stop herself from shuddering. The next morning, I ordered the servants to dig a pit as deep as a person beneath the peach tree in my courtyard. Then I had Jiao's feet bound tightly, stood her upright, and tossed her inside. Young miss, what are you doing? Only now did real terror fill Jiao's eyes. Have you ever heard of being buried alive? My voice carried a trace of excitement. It's been so long since I last used the old methods. I can't wait to see the results. Shovelful after shovel of earth rained down on Jiao while I had a small table set up, tea and snacks arranged, and sat in a grandmaster chair sipping tea and enjoying the show. The maids and older servants attending me all wore reluctant expressions. I paid them no mind and ordered every servant in the courtyard, including the still bedridden Chun Tao, to come watch the punishment. Young miss, Jiao may have erred, but isn't this too harsh? Li Nan pleaded timidly. I glanced at her. If you feel so sorry for her, why don't you take her place? Li Nan immediately fell silent. When the earth reached Jiao's waist, she could no longer move. Yet she still cried and stubbornly protested. This servant doesn't know where she offended the young miss to deserve such punishment. If the marquise and madame learn of this, they will definitely seek justice for me. I wasn't angry at all. Instead, I squatted by the edge of the pit and asked with genuine curiosity, is the depth still not uncomfortable? Fill a little more and let's see. I stood, brushed off my skirt, and loudly ordered the servants, looking as if I were merely playing an amusing game. The servants digging the earth exchanged glances but could only grit their teeth and obey. Only when the soil reached Jiao's chest did I signal them to stop. By then her breathing was labored, her face purple, and her words came in broken gasps. Satisfied, I instructed those beside me. No need to fill it further. Give her a sip of water every 2 hours. I'll come check the results tomorrow morning. Outside the window, spring sunlight blazed and peach blossoms bloomed in riotous color while bees and butterflies danced. Beneath the peach tree, Jiao's upper body protruded as she screamed hoarsely. Don't come here. Cough, cough, cough. There's probably a bug in her mouth again. Doesn't the fool realize the more she yells the worse it gets? I was dozing on the pavilion when I impatiently snapped my eyes open, startling Li Nan and Sulin who stood in attendance. They still couldn't understand how the young miss who once cried for half a day after stepping on a worm had become such a ruthless demon in just a few days. At that moment, a servant came to report, the madam and the eldest young miss have arrived. Their ears are certainly quick. It seems my courtyard leaks like a sieve. I'll have to clean house properly later. Before I could finish straightening my clothes, mother and daughter stormed in like a hurricane. Mo Yuna, someone reported that you are abusing your authority and mistreating servants in your courtyard. At first I didn't believe it, but the moment I stepped inside I saw you really burying Jiao under the tree. Madame Jiao's voice trembled with lingering fear. You have grown truly bold. A daughter of the Marquis' manor with such a vicious heart. If word gets out, where will our family's face be? Release her at once. I leisurely took a sip of tea. Mother? Why don't you ask why I'm using punishment? You ordered me to release her the moment you arrived. At this point Mo Jiao could no longer stay seated. She shouted, even mother's words you dare disobey. She told you to release her, so release her now. I gave her a half smile. Big sister is in such a hurry. Could it be a guilty conscience? Mo Jiao's face flushed crimson. Mo Yuna, don't slander me. What guilty conscience do I have? I ignored her and signaled the servants to present the evidence. Mother, this maid Jiao placed this object under my pillow. Do you think she deserves punishment? Madame Jiao took one look and her face turned scarlet. Where did this filthy thing come from? How dare it appear inside the inner courtyard of a young Mrs. Chambers? Mo Jiao stood to the side and sneered. Who knows if this dirty thing belongs to you? You're the one crying thief here. I pressed my lips together. I was afraid it would dirty big sister's eyes, so I only showed it to mother. You're sitting so far away, how could you tell it's filthy? Or did you already know what was inside this sachet? Mu Jiao choked, stammering nonsense. How could I know? Madame Jiao shot her a sharp glance and instantly understood everything. Right then, the older servant watching Jiao outside rushed in to report. She can't endure anymore and has confessed who ordered her to do this shameless thing. Inside the room, 3 pairs of eyes locked onto the servant. She trembled, glanced at Madame Jiao and Mo Jiao, and after hemming and hawing for a long while finally blurted. Jiao said it was Luo Zhou from the eldest young Mrs. Chambers who gave her the order. Madame Jiao's expression changed completely. She glared furiously at me. Who gave her the guts to frame her master? My face remained blank as I turned to the servant. Did you hear? Mother says she's lying. Fill in a little more earth until she tells the truth. Several more shovelfuls fell. The soil now covered Jiao past her chest. Her lips turned purple, her breathing grew shallower, and her voice became as thin as a thread. Those nearby had to lean close just to hear. The servant no longer dared hesitate. She ran inside and spilled everything like beans pouring from a bamboo tube. Jiao said she has physical evidence. The jade bracelet Luo Zhou gave her is still hidden inside her pillow. She begs the second young miss to spare her life. I didn't answer. I simply stared coldly at Madame Jiao, waiting for her decision. Both Madame Jiao's and Mo Jiao's faces turned ashen. The room fell into absolute silence, so quiet that even Jiao's faint groans from the courtyard could be heard clearly. That damnable cheap servant, daring to corrupt an unmarried young miss. Beating her to death wouldn't be enough. Madame Jiao ground her teeth. As she spoke, she reached to snatch the sachet. I blocked her hand. Mother is absolutely right. But the Luo Zhou that Jiao just confessed. Surely she didn't act alone. If I don't draw a little blood from them today, how will I ever control the servants in the future? Madame Jiao stared at me as if she wanted to burn a hole through my body with her gaze. I met her eyes without flinching. After a long while, she spoke with difficulty. Anyone who dares act without permission and harm their master, beat them both to death. I withdrew my hand. Madame Jiao snatched the sachet and stormed out in fury. The moment they reached the courtyard gate, they heard me issue a cold order. Bury them all. Dig them up only after they're dead. I don't want corpses buried in the courtyard bringing bad luck. Madame Mo and Mo Jiao bolted like ghosts were chasing them. Skirts hiked up as they ran. By nightfall, Luo Zhou from Mo Jiao's chambers had hanged herself. According to the servant sent to arrest her, Luo Zhou had been so terrified of being buried alive like Jiao that she panicked and ended her own life. I clicked my tongue in mild regret. What a pity, I had already picked out the crabapple tree on the other side of the courtyard just for her. That night, Chun Tao, her face still bearing 2 bowl-sized scars, came to my room, thudded to her knees and kowtowed. This servant was blinded by lard and bewitched into harming the young miss. This servant will confess everything. The next morning, the Marquis summoned me to his study. Even thinking with my toes, I knew Madame Jiao couldn't handle me herself and had gone to whisper in his ear. The moment I stepped into the study, before he could explode, I let out a soft sigh. Father is so busy with official duties, yet he still has to worry about inner court matters. Your daughter is truly unfilial. Marquis Mo Feng paused, his expression softening slightly. You already know your father is busy with official business. Then why are you still stirring up waves inside the manor? I paid his words no heed. I don't know exactly what mother told you, father, but I was only punishing a few servants who had forgotten their place. Yet she still made such a huge fuss about it. Marquis Mo Feng's face darkened. How dare you gossip about your elders behind their backs? You are a noble young lady of the Marquis' manor, yet at the slightest provocation you resort to killing people and using such cruel punishments as burying servants alive. If word gets out that our dynasty governs the nation with benevolence and righteousness, while my own daughter has such a violent temperament, won't I be mocked for failing to teach my children properly? Govern the nation with benevolence and righteousness. I laughed coldly in my heart. He probably had never seen the shadow prison personally established by the emperor. Whether loyal minister or traitor, as long as they aroused the emperor's suspicion, they would taste all 18 layers of hell. I was once the person whose name struck terror across the entire realm. The former warden of the shadow prison. What I had shown today was merely a small demonstration. My true methods hadn't even been unleashed yet. Despite my inner contempt, my face showed nothing. Marquis Mo Feng was not like Madame Jiao or Mo Jiao. He cared nothing for the petty schemes of the inner courtyard. What he truly cared about was his own reputation, profit, and status. From the intelligence I had gathered during my time as warden, Mo Feng appeared neutral on the surface but secretly supported one of the princes and was deeply involved in the factional struggles. So I took a step forward and lowered my voice. "Father, your daughter was not abusing punishment. Shaju's behavior was extremely suspicious. She often secretly met with outsiders, as if passing along information." Marquis Mo Feng seemed unconvinced. "Shiju? Impossible. She is a servant born and raised in the Dingguo Marquis manor." "Don't spout nonsense." I handed him a sheet of paper. "Please take a look, father. This is what your daughter did while searching Shaju's room." Marquis Mo Feng opened it. The thin sheet clearly recorded his daily schedule, who he had met, and when. He drew in a sharp breath. This was clearly someone secretly monitoring him. "As far as your daughter knows, Luozhou beside Big Sister is the same as Xiaju. She has even more opportunities to approach father and mother." Many of the pieces of information were passed from her side to Xiaju. I added fuel to the fire. Seeing the hand holding the paper begin to tremble, I knew the effect was achieved. Madame Jiao and Mo Jiao had waited anxiously outside the study for half a day, only to see me walk out completely unharmed. Before they could react in shock, Marquis Mo Feng's voice rang out. He ordered all the servants around Mo Jiao replaced. He also confined her room to reflect on her actions. If she ever again did anything to harm sisterly affection, he would not forgive her. Mo Jiao was stunned, completely clueless about what had happened. Madame Jiao rushed in to question him and was harshly scolded by Marquis Mo Feng before being driven out of the study. How could they know that I had whispered the crucial words into Marquis Mo Feng's ear? The quarrel between sisters was nothing more than childish bickering. But Big Sister had no idea of the bigger picture and had been used by others without realizing it. Then I presented Chun Tao's confession, complete with her handprint. In it, she clearly stated that Mo Jiao had ordered her to cooperate with the mountain bandits to kidnap me. One of the bandits had been a childhood friend from the same village as Chun Tao before she was sold into the Dingguo Marquis manor. No wonder she hadn't been afraid at all back then. The statement listed in meticulous detail the time, place, method of contact, what Mo Jiao had said, what benefits she promised the bandits, where the silver was hidden, and how it was to be divided. After years as warden of the shadow prison, the confessions I had taken never had the slightest flaw. Marquis Mo Feng had no choice but to believe it. Of course, I knew he didn't really care about the open and secret struggles in the inner courtyard, much less the life or death of a concubine-born daughter. I could only add a little seasoning. Big Sister is a sheltered young lady. How could she know about such things? There must be someone with ill intentions whispering in her ear. Although your daughter's life is worthless, it still represents the face of the Marquis manor. I understand father's high expectations for us. If my reputation were truly ruined, not only would the Marquis manor lose face, but your daughter would also be unable to fulfill her filial duties. Wouldn't that waste all the years father spent raising me? At that point, the ones laughing would be the petty schemers targeting our manor. If father wishes to win over the prince, marriage alliances are the best method. You may not care about your daughter's life or death, but if you see us as tools for political marriage, every daughter is worth a city. How could we be casually sacrificed? After listening, Marquis Mo Feng's expression shifted unpredictably. Finally he sighed. My daughter has thought things through so thoroughly. It is this Marquis who has been too indulgent with your legitimate sister, allowing her to become narrow-minded and unable to distinguish right from wrong. Your father will discipline her strictly. Then he shot me a sideways glance. It's just that previously your father didn't know you could handle matters with such maturity and thoroughness. In the end, he had begun to suspect me as well, but I remained perfectly calm. Before my birth mother passed, she always told your daughter to be cautious and keep a low profile, never to stand out. That's why your daughter only dared to keep her head down. Now that mother is gone, your daughter has no one to rely on in the manor. Only then did I realize how fair and generous father is. The kindest person of all. That's why I've grown a little bolder. I hope father won't blame me. Chun Tao had not only confessed, I had also coaxed her into revealing many inner courtyard secrets, especially those concerning the past of the original second young Miss Mo, the former owner of this body. Just as I had guessed, Marquis Mo Feng was like other aristocratic patriarchs. He knew almost nothing about his concubine, born children. He rarely even spoke more than a few words with them on ordinary days. Those explanations were more than enough to dispel his doubts. Marquis Mo Feng nodded, believing I simply wanted to find another backer. Late spring turning into early summer, the weather grew warmer by the day. The maternal grandfather of Mo Jiao, Madame Jiao's own family, invited me along with the others to their manor for a banquet. The Jiao family came from a line of military generals with a glorious reputation. Previously they had never deigned to notice a mere concubine, born daughter of the Marquis' manor. For them to break precedent and invite me today, even a fool could tell nothing good would come of it. I sneered inwardly. Since Madame Jiao and her daughter couldn't handle me themselves, they had gone back to her natal family for reinforcements. I was quite curious to see what tricks they still had up their sleeves. The moment I arrived, I was led into a small side hall. Then the servants closed the door and left, leaving me alone. I was starting to feel bored when a man walked in. He wore a martial robe, with handsome features, but his brows and eyes were filled with arrogant insolence. After observing him for a while, I recognized him as the Jiao family's third young master, Jiao Jun. I had heard he had followed General Jiao onto the battlefield several times despite his young age and earned some military merits. No wonder he strutted around like a peacock spreading its tail feathers. His gaze toward me was full of contempt. A thing that can't even be brought to the table. Meeting a man and not knowing to avoid him, yet staring so boldly. Truly shameless. I let out a soft, mocking laugh. Cousin didn't look at me, so how do you know I was looking at you? Your manners aren't much better than mine. Jiao Jun hadn't expected me to talk back. He ground his teeth in fury. You're nothing but a lowly concubine, born daughter. How dare you compare yourself to me? In the Jiao family, you wouldn't even be allowed to sit at the same table for meals. Grandmother even asked me to come. I raised an eyebrow. I truly didn't know the general's manor mistreated its concubine, born children so badly. If word got out, I'm afraid it would damage General Zhou's reputation. He exploded in anger. Who said the Jiao family mistreats concubine, born children? You're the one who just said it. In the Jiao family, concubine, born daughters aren't allowed at the table. He stared at me with a mix of shame and rage for a long time before suddenly bursting into laughter, his smile full of malice. I almost fell for your trick and forgot the main matter. He slowly approached me. Today this young master drank a bit too much and accidentally wandered into the wrong flower hall. I mistook cousin for my personal maid and, well, turned raw rice into cooked rice. Made it a done deal. What does cousin think? He leaned down, placing both arms on the back of my chair and trapping me between them. Jiao Jun's face drew so close that his hot breath fanned across my skin. His originally handsome features now looked utterly repulsive. I looked back at him with utter disdain. What's this? The dignified third young master Jiao actually has to resort to such despicable methods. Instead of being a general, you want to play the role of a thug. He snorted coldly. Thug, you think too highly of yourself. It would be your blessing if this young master favors you. If word gets out, people will only call it a romantic affair. If you're sensible, perhaps this young master will graciously grant you the status of concubine. I used to be a man. Back when I handled cases involving seduction and affairs, I would always sneer that flies don't bite a seamless egg. But today I finally understood a clean, innocent woman could invite such disaster simply by sitting still. I cursed inwardly. Men really are all big pig trotters. Madame Jiao had gone to such lengths to harm me. Now that the Marquis trusted me, my position in the manor had risen with the tide. I was no longer someone any random cat or dog could bully at will. But with Zhou Jun's status, even the Marquis would find it difficult to say anything. The Jiao family naturally wouldn't let a low-born concubine daughter like me become Jiao Jun's principal wife. In the end, they would simply frame me with some crime and make me his concubine as an act of great mercy. Once I stepped through the Jiao family gates, wouldn't I be completely at their mercy to mold however they pleased? This move was truly vicious and ruthless against ordinary women, But to me, reputation and chastity weren't worth even 3 copper coins from the bun stall on the street. I shot to my feet, nearly bumping into Zhao Jun's chin and forcing him to instinctively step back several paces. Seizing the chance, I strode quickly toward the door, then turned my head with a mocking smile. Your concubine. What kind of thing is that? Even if you married me as your principal wife, I wouldn't want it. Farewell. You cheap wench. This young master has already given you face, hasn't he? He roared and lunged forward, yanking me into his arms and clamping down with both hands. I originally planned to just ruin your reputation and be done with it, but this feisty little temper of yours has actually sparked some interest in this young master. Why don't I take you right here and make you serve me properly? His eyes were filled with lust. Zhao Jun had been to war and possessed some martial skill. No matter how I struggled in his embrace, I couldn't break free. I also sensitively felt something hard pressing against me from below. In an instant, goosebumps rose all over my back. Damn it, daring to disgust me like this. I'll turn you into a eunuch in a moment. Seeing my face change color and my hair stand on end, Zhao Jun laughed mockingly. I thought you were some chaste and virtuous lady. The moment this young master touches you, you react like this. Truly born to be lowly. One hand slipped inside my collar, stroking the smooth skin of my neck. There was no crying or screaming as he had expected. I lifted my head to look at him, smiling dangerously. Third young master Jiao is the one who's truly lowly. I haven't even touched you yet, and you're already reacting. As I spoke, one hand reached down to his lower body. I was all too familiar with a man's anatomy and knew exactly where to strike to end his life. His whole body shuddered, his voice turning hoarse. So cousin actually has such courage. His eyes glazed over as he lowered his head to kiss me. But my expression suddenly turned ice cold. My 5 fingers tightened and twisted sharply. When a person suffers extreme pain, they often can't even make a sound. Watching his face contort, mouth wide open but no sound coming out, I lifted my knee and slammed it viciously into his groin. He curled up like a shrimp, collapsing to his knees. Cold sweat poured down his face as it turned deathly pale. I squatted down and patted his cheek. If you dare try anything again, I'll cut off those 2 things of yours, slice them thin, sprinkle them with salt, and serve them as snacks for your father with his wine. Finished speaking, I couldn't help feeling a twinge of regret. If I had something convenient at hand, I could have served them hot at the Jiao family banquet right now. You should know that back in the shadow prison, extracting confessions through torture was my specialty. Zhao Jun trembled all over, whether from pain or fear. It was impossible to tell. Thanks to Madame Jiao and Zhao Jun's kindness. To make things easier, no servants had been stationed outside the door. I carefully closed the door tightly behind me and strolled away leisurely. As I passed through the flower garden, I spotted the third prince strolling with his attendants in the distance. He's here too. The Jiao family truly had impressive face. Even a prince could be invited. My eyes swept around, and a brilliant idea suddenly occurred to me for escaping the Jiao family's entanglement. I deliberately rumpled my clothes, messed up my hair a bit, then ran toward the garden exit in panic, accidentally crashing straight into the third prince. How dare you collide with His Highness the Third Prince? The attendant behind him shouted. By now, chaos had erupted from the direction of the flower hall. They must have discovered Zhao Jun's injury. Third prince, save me. Third young master Jiao wants to kill me. Still shaken, I clutched tightly to the third prince's robe. He frowned, clearly unwilling to get involved in the Jiao family's private affairs. He was about to push me away and brush it off casually. Young lady, you must be joking. In broad daylight, how could anyone want to kill you? Third prince, it's true. Earlier I accidentally overheard third young master Jiao secretly discussing with someone. Something about the army supporting the crown prince. It wasn't fabricated at all. Before I was harmed, an official I was interrogating mentioned how the Jiao father and son rely on their military power, form factions for private gain, and secretly support the crown prince. It's just a pity I died before I could investigate thoroughly. The third prince was no saint himself. He had long coveted the position of crown prince and had been engaged in open and secret struggles with him for years. The moment he heard this, he immediately grew alert. One arm supported me as he asked urgently, "What else did they say?" They mentioned several names. Some I've heard father mention before, others I don't know. Then the two somehow started arguing. The other person injured third young master Jiao. I panicked for a moment when I was discovered. Third young Master Jiao wanted to kill me to silence me. If he hadn't been injured, I would probably be dead by now. The third prince wanted to ask more, but behind me came the voices of Madame Jiao and the Jiao family servants. Mo Yuna ran that way. Don't let her escape. By now the third prince believed my words, without a shred of doubt. He pulled me behind him and looked coldly at the Jiao family members charging over aggressively to seize me. Miss Mo is this prince's person. I'd like to see who dares touch her. That day, I was personally escorted home by the third prince himself. The entire Marquis' manor was shaken to its core. A few days later, the third prince came to propose marriage, requesting I be taken as his side consort. Marquis Mo Feng was so shocked his mouth hung open and wouldn't close. What trick did Yuna use to make the third prince come propose after just one meeting? Of course it was thanks to the list of names I had dropped. On the way back to the manor that day, the third prince had questioned me repeatedly. I had pretended to be terrified and dodged every question. He was also very understanding and immediately used the position of side consort as leverage. But I couldn't let the Marquis know, so I could only pretend to be shy and lower my head. Your daughter doesn't understand. Perhaps the third prince developed feelings for your daughter at first sight. Mu Jiao stamped her foot in fury upon hearing this. You're lying. It was clearly cousin who had feelings for you. How did it become the third prince? Before she could finish, the Marquis slapped her. Nonsense. What is the Jiao family? Are they even worthy of Yuna? After that, people from the Jiao family came looking for trouble with me, but the Marquis scolded them roundly and drove them away. On one side was becoming a concubine in the Jiao family, on the other was becoming a side consort to a prince. The Marquis could clearly tell which was heavier. Mo Jiao hated me so much she ground her teeth, but there was nothing she could do to me. The only one with a headache was me. As an old veteran who had waded through rivers of blood and mountains of corpses, I truly couldn't imagine myself gracefully serving beneath a man in the future. So that day when the third prince visited, I delicately expressed that I did not wish to become his side consort. His expression instantly sank. Miss Mo, don't be too greedy. With your status, side consort is already an enormous elevation. God help me. Could he have misunderstood that I wanted to be the principal consort? I wanted to explain but didn't want to embarrass him. Instead I said, serving with beauty can never last long. I would rather stay by your highness's side as a strategist than be a caged canary in the rear courtyard waiting for your pity. The third prince scrutinized me from head to toe with suspicious eyes. A woman serving as strategist truly is shocking to the world. I would need to show real ability to convince him. So I spoke several names. Seeing the shock in the third prince's eyes, I took another step to entice him. Your Highness, I know far more than just this. If your Highness trusts me, I definitely won't disappoint you. He looked at me thoughtfully for a long time before revealing a strange smile. What a pity. Just now I saw Mrs. truly intelligent and decisive, radiant and dazzling. But if you don't wish it, this prince won't force you. Then we'll do as you wish. Third prince, does this mean you agree? I felt a bit puzzled. I was clearly negotiating with him. So why did his gaze toward me suddenly seem so impure? These imperial nobles really have unusual tastes. A chill ran down my spine again. Fortunately, the third prince still knew what was important. Afterward, he frequently invited me. Sometimes for tea, sometimes to admire flowers, but in reality it was all to discuss secret matters with me. I used the intelligence I had gathered during my time as warden of the Shadow Prison to help him earn several small but solid achievements, treating it as my entrance gift. The third prince was extremely pleased and rewarded me with gold, silver, and jewels as tokens of appreciation. The Marquis thought the third prince particularly favored me, so he valued me even more. I was not only moved to a larger, more spacious courtyard but also received treatment equal to Mo Jiao's. It infuriated the mother-daughter pair so much they probably wished they could sew a voodoo doll every day and stick needles into it. Finally, one day on my way back to the manor after a secret meeting with the third prince, I was kidnapped. When I was brought to that dark, damp, sunless place, I couldn't help grinning. This place felt far too familiar. I took a light sniff, inhaling the long thick metallic scent of blood, then narrowed my eyes. Seeing me look so delighted, the jailer escorting me couldn't hide his astonishment. You've got quite the nerve. Even veteran court officials who had weathered countless storms would tremble in fear here. Yet a young lady like you looks completely unconcerned. I opened my eyes, my sharp gaze locking onto him. I should be the one asking you. What virtue or talent does this young lady possess to be brought to a place like this? This shadow prison only interrogates those who oppose the emperor or plot rebellion. In other words, everyone has an extraordinary status. Ordinary criminals don't even have the chance to come here. What are you doing? Don't tell me you don't understand in your heart. You must suffer before you'll be satisfied. Another jailer cracked his whip. Under the flickering torchlight, his face looked even more sinister. I chuckled. Brother, that's not how interrogating a prisoner works. I've done so many things. If you speak so vaguely without head or tail, how am I supposed to know which matter to confess? If I say too much by mistake, wouldn't I just be inviting trouble upon myself? He was rendered speechless and exploded in fury. Stop playing dumb. What exactly have you been doing every day with the third prince? Do I need to spell it out for you? I looked at him with open mockery. Naturally, doing what men and women like to do. Why? Does the yeoman even manage people's private affairs? You. He lunged forward to push me, but the other jailer stopped him. A proper daughter of the Marquis's manor actually speaks such shameless words. It seems we've underestimated you. He turned to advise his companion. Why get angry with her? Right now she's just a fish on the chopping block. We can shape her however we want. Finally, someone with a clearer head, they shoved me into a prison cell filled with every kind of torture instrument. Dried bloodstains covered the blue brick floor everywhere. Strapped to the interrogation rack in the center was a man covered in wounds. Miss Mo, someone as delicate as you probably can't endure even a few lashes. You'd better confess now, or you'll end up like him. The moment the jailer finished speaking, a whip cracked down on the prisoner with a sharp thwack. Fresh blood welled up in a horrifying red line. The prisoner let out a groan, then gritted his teeth. You evil jailers, don't even think about forcing a false confession out of me. I looked carefully. Isn't this the great corrupt official who was on my list before I died? This man's crimes were heinous, but compared to him, the emperor cared more about several other high ministers who formed factions. So I hadn't been very familiar with handling his case. His crimes were clear as day to me. At most he had bribed a few rebellious ministers. He truly hadn't reached the level of plotting rebellion. It seemed the shadow prison these days wasn't what it used to be. In order to meet their quota quickly, they were even dragging in minor officials with beards. I shook my head. With such light drizzle, how could he be made to confess? The jailer escorting me saw that I showed no panic all and couldn't help asking. You really have excellent composure. According to you, how should he be interrogated? I smiled faintly. I have a method that will make him wish he were dead. Simply insert an iron hook into his nose and slowly pull his brain out bit by bit. The process must be slow so he won't die immediately. When the iron hook stirs inside the brain, the first sensation is extreme itching, like 10,000 ants gnawing at the heart. Then comes pain so intense it feels like 10,000 arrows piercing the heart. If he wants the torment to end quickly, he'll answer whatever you ask. I clearly saw the familiar terror in the prisoner's eyes. After all, he had committed countless evils and had many lives on his hands. There was no need to show mercy. The jailer's legs turned to jelly when they heard this. One asked in a trembling voice, "Won't that kill him? Then how the hell are we supposed to interrogate him?" I turned around. The torchlight danced in my eyes, flickering between light and shadow, startling the two behind me into stepping back. That's why technique is crucial. You must hook slowly and gently to ensure he remains conscious enough to confess. Once he finishes confessing, his brain will have drained out completely. You must control the rhythm perfectly. That is the essence of this method. The entire cell fell deathly silent. Only the crackling of the torches could be heard. The 3 jailers and 1 prisoner stood frozen like wooden statues. Seeing them so useless, I clicked my tongue. If you don't believe me, let me demonstrate personally. This is a secret technique never taught to outsiders. Today I'll do you a favor, watch carefully. No one stopped me. I rolled up my sleeves and stepped forward at a leisurely pace. The jailer who had been interrogating the prisoner unconsciously moved aside. My slender fingers glided across the array of torture instruments before finally stopping on a small, delicate iron hook. The shaft was thin and the tip razor sharp. Satisfied, I picked it up. Come, secure his head. Someone hurriedly tied the prisoner's head firmly to the wooden post behind him. I looked up and met his terrified eyes. Endure it. The pain is only temporary. Soon you will experience hallucinations. Sometimes feeling like you're in heaven, sometimes like you've fallen into hell. It's quite stimulating. The ice-cold iron hook glinted as it thrust into his nostril. A blood-curdling scream like a pig being slaughtered instantly filled the cell. I'll confess. I'll confess. I'll tell you everything. The entire cell filled with a foul stench as the man lost control of his bladder and bowels. I pinched my nose and stepped back, frowning. You said you wanted to confess? I haven't even started yet. I'll confess. I'll confess everything. Why don't you understand human speech? The prisoner wailed miserably. I tossed the iron hook back onto the table with regret. I was planning to use this chance to test out a new interrogation method I read about in the records. Who knew he would be so weak? Looks like I won't get to try it this time. I waved my hand. Take him down, clean him up, and prepare to record his confession. The prison guards stood there with dazed expressions before hurriedly rushing forward to unstrap the prisoner from the rack. Young lady, you don't seem like those ordinary sheltered young misses at all. On the contrary, you look quite familiar with these torture and interrogation methods. A voice rang out from behind me. I turned my head. The moment I clearly saw the newcomer's attire and imposing aura, I let out a cold laugh. So it's the warden himself who has come in person. It seems this young lady has quite the face indeed. Even as I spoke those words, my heart was filled with utter contempt. After I died, this kind of trash was left in charge of the shadow prison. Not only that, I acutely noticed that the shadow prison seemed to have undergone a massive purge. I didn't see a single familiar face. No wonder it had become so dilapidated. The new jailers were all useless. They would even drag in a frail woman just to meet their quota. If my old subordinates were still here, how could things have fallen to this level? The warden showed a look of surprise. This is the shadow prison personally established by the emperor. Very few people outside even know of its existence. How does a young lady from a noble family know so much about my official position? I leisurely pulled over a chair from the interrogation area and sat down. Then I picked up the teapot on the side table and poured myself a cup. I had been busy the entire morning, and my throat was already dry and scratchy. However, the cup didn't look particularly clean, and the tea itself was somewhat murky. I frowned and set the cup down. I know far more than that. Those matters involving the third prince are actually insignificant. Oh, how does this lord know you're not simply fabricating stories to save your own skin? The warden stared at me coldly. I lowered my head to look at my own slender frame. My lord, with this frail body of mine, I fundamentally couldn't withstand even a few lashes. You must have already realized that, which is why you didn't start with torture right away. Since I don't wish to suffer needlessly, naturally I will know how to repay your lordship. Moreover, if you listen to me, you will definitely be able to catch several big fish. That merit would be 100 times greater than interrogating me. When the time comes, you'll be able to hold your head high before the emperor. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? Then let's hear what you have to say. The warden appeared somewhat moved. I casually mentioned a few details about the secret matters I had been investigating before my death. His face immediately filled with shock. Hurry and pour the young lady some fine tea. I took a sip of the fragrant, refreshing tea while watching the anxious warden who could no longer wait. Before I continue, may I ask if your lordship could reveal who exactly secretly reported me? After a full hour of secret discussion, I walked out of the interrogation room with calm, composed steps. Behind me, the warden's face glowed with satisfaction and excitement. The jailers standing guard outside the door were stunned for a moment. They glanced at the warden's radiant expression and secretly asked, "My lord, did you harvest yin to replenish yang? Your complexion has improved so dramatically." He immediately smacked the man hard on the head. Scram. How dare you speak so rudely in front of Miss Mu? Miss Mo is this official's great benefactor. From now on, you must treat her with the utmost respect. After scolding his subordinate, the warden's face turned solemn as he issued orders. Go and bring Jiao Jun in for this official. In truth, I had already vaguely guessed who was responsible for my current predicament. In this world, the people who both hated me and knew my affairs were limited to just a handful. Sure enough, the warden told me that Jiao Jun was the first to step forward and accuse me, claiming that the third prince and I were using the marriage alliance as a cover to plot for the throne, and who had secretly informed Jiao Jun. Even thinking with my toes, I knew it was that mother-daughter pair. I ground my teeth in hatred. The Jiao family themselves were far from clean, yet they still dared to provoke me. Was the lesson from last time not enough? This time, I'll show you what happens when you touch a tiger's backside. At first, the warden still harbored some suspicion. Miss Mo, are you certain you're not simply seeking personal revenge? But when I laid out the evidence one by one, how the Jiao family had secretly embezzled military provisions, recruited soldiers in secret, formed factions for private gain, the contempt on his face vanished completely. When Zhao Jun was dragged into the shadow prison, he happened to see me standing there smiling, waiting for him. Yo, how are you here? Shouldn't you be? Zhao Jun's face was full of shock and disbelief. I gave a cold snort. I was the first to report the crime, and I'm the key witness. Where else would I be? Third young Master Zhao, are you very surprised? I took a step forward. Zhao Jun instinctively covered his lower body. You cheap wench. What exactly did you accuse me of? I curled my lips. You'll find out very soon. I had thought that since Zhao Jun came from a military background, he would be a tough nut to crack. Who would have guessed that this man, despite looking strong and sturdy, couldn't withstand even a single blow? I had barely used a few techniques before he eagerly spilled everything. It seemed his so-called military achievements were mostly fabricated. Those claims were severely watered down. The surrounding jailers covered their ears and lamented. We've been in this profession for years, but we've never heard such unpleasant screaming. I swept my gaze around and saw a circle of jailers standing there watching me work. I asked curiously, don't you all have work to do? Why are you crowding around here? The leader smiled fawningly. We all came to broaden our horizons. We've never seen the young lady's techniques before, so we wanted to come and learn. I smiled. How was it after watching? It's hard to describe, very complicated. I feel both terrified and nauseous, but the more I think about it, the more I want to keep watching. I silently considered whether I should write a torture manual and leave it here for them to study, so they wouldn't look so inexperienced. The warden left in high spirits after obtaining what he wanted. Before departing, he thoughtfully took all the jailers with him. He knew I still had many private matters to discuss with Zhao Jun. When Zhao Jun weakly opened his eyes, he saw me standing in front of him with an evil smile on my lips. Mo Yuna, just give me a quick death. You should know that no matter what, I would never dare provoke the king of hell like you. It was all because grandmother and that mother-daughter pair incited me. I laughed mockingly. Only now you think to push the blame. Too late. I picked up the exquisite small knife in front of me, weighed it in my hand, turned around and smiled. Last time I told you, if you dared to act recklessly again, I wouldn't be polite anymore. It seems you didn't take my words to heart at all. I returned to the Marquis's manor completely unscathed, just in time for dinner. The moment Madame Jiao and Mo Jiao saw me, they were so shocked the chopsticks fell from their hands. They had already heard that Zhao Jun had been secretly arrested. Seeing me return safe and sound, they immediately understood that Zhao Jun's chances of survival were slim. What did you do to cousin? Mo Jiao stubbornly questioned me. Him. He's still alive. It's just that his mouth isn't very tight. He already confessed everything about you and mother. I looked at the pair with a half smile. You're framing us. Madame Zhao's face turned deathly pale, but her mouth remained stubborn. What could Jiao and I possibly have done? He said we secretly overheard the third prince and you talking, then turned around and falsely accused us. Even if we measured, we didn't break any law. What can you do to us? What can we do? I smiled and took out a plate of food from the nearby food box. To thank you both, your daughter specially brought back a dish from the prison for you to enjoy with your wine. On the table a plate of neatly sliced meat. The center was pink, half raw and still streaked with blood. The two of them stared at the dish in horror. What is this? Cousin invites you to eat. He's still in prison, and it's inconvenient for him, so he specially asked me to bring this back to thank you for sending him to a fate worse than death. I considerately pushed the plate forward. Eat it while it's hot. It won't taste good when it gets cold. Could this be? The two of them looked up and met my unblinking stare. They instantly couldn't hold it together. Oak! Both of them covered their mouths and collapsed weakly to the floor. Mo Yuna, you're not human. The pair crawled and scrambled, supported by the older maids as they fled the small hall. Humph, how useless. I picked up a piece of meat with my chopsticks and put it in my mouth. What a waste of heavenly fragrance pavilion's signature braised meat. I had simply bought it with the silver from Jiao Jun's person. What did they think it was? Human flesh. I wasn't that perverted. Marquise Mo Feng rushed in after hearing the commotion. Rebellious daughter. You didn't die in prison, yet you returned just to stir up trouble. I continued eating the meat and drinking wine while looking at him with a dark, gloomy gaze. Shortly after my incident, the third prince broke off the marriage alliance with me. Marquise Mo Feng, fearing he would be implicated, publicly announced that he had expelled me from the family and removed my name from the family register. These men are all greedy for fame and profit, selfish to the extreme, and cowardly as mice. The moment the wind blows and the grass moves, they abandon the carriage to protect the general. They are not worth relying on. It was a waste that I once wanted to borrow their power to uncover the truth behind my murder. Marquise Mo Feng was probably frightened by my gaze. How could he have imagined that a young lady would possess such a dark and vicious look? Father, the Jiao family is about to collapse. If you have any connections with them, you should clean up your affairs quickly. When the time comes, don't say your daughter never warned you. I poured myself another cup of wine and drank it slowly. Marquise Mo Feng's face turned the color of iron. He glanced at the shadow prison guards standing by the door, opened his mouth, but ultimately didn't dare say another word. The warden still wanted more information from me, so he had specially sent people to support me. On another level, they were also there to monitor me. I understood everything clearly but didn't mind. As long as I had the chance to get closer to the truth of what happened back then, I didn't mind being used. However, just a few days after the Jiao family collapsed, the warden suddenly lost contact with me. Through the shadow prison guards who were still in contact, I followed the trail and discovered that the warden had died of a sudden illness. He had just solved a major case and should have been at the peak of his career. How could he die so suddenly? I couldn't help thinking back to myself years ago. Thinking carefully, it was exactly when I was investigating the Jiao family's secret work for the crown prince that I was killed. The current situation was almost identical to back then. Could it be the crown prince's doing? But the shadow prison was personally established by the emperor. Could the crown prince's reach extend that far? All the jailers close to the warden had been cleanly eliminated, exactly like what had happened to me years ago. Only the few who had been sent to monitor me managed to escape with their lives. Fearing they would also be silenced, they willingly followed me to uncover the truth. With them leading the way, I returned to the shadow prison through a secret passage. There, I heard two people engaged in a secret conversation. Imperial Father, your son was wrong. Where exactly were you wrong? Your son should not have been bewitched by the Jiao father and son, allowing them to commit such treasonous and immoral acts. You were wrong for not using people who are careful and meticulous in their schemes. Instead, you let them flaunt their power everywhere and act greedily for life while fearing death. Others only needed to investigate a little before the trail led straight to you. Every single time, I have to clean up your mess. Thank you, Imperial Father, for not blaming your son. You are the crown prince I personally established. If I want to depose you, only I can do it. I have long seen all your little tricks. If not for consideration of your mother, I would have dealt with you long ago. Your son prostrates himself in admiration before Imperial Father's wisdom. It's just that this time I have caused Imperial Father to lose another capable minister and general. You mean the warden? What is he? There have been people more favored by me than him whom I have also disposed of. You mean the previous warden, Q Ran? He was also a hunting dog that has been used for too long must be disposed of eventually, no matter how obedient it is, to prevent it from growing arrogant from its achievements and developing other ambitions. The emperor's voice was completely calm, yet it struck my heart like a sharp blade. Q Ran, the emperor you served with absolute loyalty, the one you were willing to spill your blood and brains for, turned out to be the very murderer who killed you. All those years, I had worked for the emperor with complete devotion. Among the rebels I had handled were no shortage of loyal and upright officials. Even though my conscience had been uneasy, I had comforted myself that it was for the sake of loyalty to the ruler. But in the emperor's eyes, I was nothing more than a hunting dog. We poured our hearts and blood into working for him, while he used the results we painstakingly obtained to put on a show of deep father-son affection. Then, without the slightest hesitation, he sacrificed us to win the people's hearts. How ridiculous that I had racked my brains wondering who the murderer was. In truth, I simply hadn't dared to admit it. The shadow prison was personally established by the emperor. Besides himself, who else would have the audacity to touch one of his own people? I staggered out of the secret passage. The shadow prison guard following behind me called out, "Miss Mo, have you given up? Given up?" I slowly came to a stop, turned around, and looked at him. The heavens gave me a chance to start over. How could I possibly give up? The third prince, Marquis Junbei, and those others were all unreliable. Even the emperor I had once served with absolute loyalty turned out to be a joke. One could imagine that once the crown prince ascended the throne, he would be the same kind of ruler. Then why shouldn't I risk everything for myself and seize the supreme power of the world in my own hands? Doesn't the emperor fear that I will develop wild ambitions? Then I'll simply show him what true ambition looks like. Several months later, in autumn, I had Madame Jiao introduce me to the imperial consorts and concubines in the palace. The Jiao family's natal home had already collapsed. Madame Jiao no longer knew what power stood behind me and feared me like a demon. As long as something didn't harm her or Mo Jiao, she almost always obeyed me. In this way I became acquainted with Consort Liang, one of the emperor's consorts, and her 9-year-old seventh prince. The emperor's worries back then had not been misplaced. While monitoring all major and minor affairs in the court, I accidentally learned several secrets hidden within the palace. Consort Liang came from a humble background, so the seventh prince was not favored either. They suffered endless bullying in the palace. When the seventh prince had his prey stolen from him and hid in the bushes crying his heart out, I appeared before him at just the right moment. "Seventh prince, do you want revenge? Do you want your mother, Consort Liang, to live more comfortably in the future?" He nodded innocently. I smiled gently. "Then please convey a message to Consort Liang for me. As long as she agrees to my conditions, I will help both mother and son ascend to the highest position." Afterward, the third prince's plot to seize the throne was exposed. He was stripped of his title and exiled to the frontier as a commoner. The crown prince was deemed lacking in virtue and pressured by the court officials into being deposed by the emperor. The other princes either died in the brutal fraternal struggles or were demoted and sent away. In the end, only the seventh prince remained. He was only 12 years old when he was named crown prince. That year, Consort Liang was promoted to empress. The first decree she issued after becoming empress was to have the crown prince take me as his side consort. I was already 18 at the time. A thorough old maid and a concubine-born daughter. The entire court, including the emperor, couldn't understand why the empress would choose me, but the empress insisted firmly. "I have calculated their 8 characters' birth charts. We are extremely compatible. She will help him greatly. Besides, she will only be a side consort." The emperor didn't care much and agreed. Only I knew that the empress had a weak and soft personality, and the seventh prince's talents were equally mediocre. Without me controlling things from behind, they would never have made it this far. Now that they stood in high positions, they lived every day in fear and urgently needed me to stabilize the situation. The mother and daughter in the Dingguo Marquis manor not only caused no trouble but eagerly sent me off as if seeing off a plague god. Marquis Mofeng was even more eager to become the father-in-law of the crown prince. He couldn't ask for more. Less than a year after I married the crown prince, the emperor fell gravely ill and handed over the government to the crown prince. The court officials had not expected someone so young to handle all affairs so properly and flawlessly. They praised him endlessly and supported the crown prince even more. The following year, the emperor passed away. The moment the crown prince ascended the throne, the first thing he did was appoint me as empress. The entire court opposed it, saying the emperor should marry a daughter from a prestigious noble family of suitable age to be empress. But no matter how they submitted memorials or protested, they could not meet the emperor, nor could they see the empress dowager. The emperor, who had been restrained for many years, had long run off to enjoy himself. Even when he did meet them, he would only say one sentence: "Let the empress decide everything," before dismissing them. As for the empress dowager, she kept a troupe of handsome young actors and spent her days seeking pleasure in her palace. The only person the court officials could meet was me, the empress. Even the memorials opposing me had to be submitted to my hands first. After several months of this, the entire court finally understood that all government affairs during the crown prince's time had actually been handled by me. Their protests were meaningless, and they couldn't start a rebellion. Since the court was still running smoothly, they might as well accept it. Later, when the emperor grew up, I selected several consorts and concubines for him, none lacking in noble birth. Although they also engaged in open and secret struggles for favor and position, I had held power for many years and my position was unshakable. I looked at their antics like watching children playing. They knew who truly held power in the court, so they didn't care too much about the emperor's favor. Instead, whenever they had the chance, they would surround me. They chattered endlessly. Some even grew bold enough to ask, "Your servant knows that your majesty treats the emperor like a younger brother. But in this deep and lonely palace, doesn't your majesty want to find a few close companions?" After all, no one dared to speak too much about it. A chill ran down my spine. The reason I had chosen the seventh prince back then was precisely because he was still young. Marrying him, I wouldn't need to perform the duties of a wife, and I could legitimately approach the seat of imperial power. Having lived as a woman for so many years, I had long since lost any such desires. Looking at these beautiful young ladies laughing and sulking around me was already enough. With supreme power in my hands, I no longer needed to worry about anything else. Oh right, I almost forgot to mention the Dingguo Marquis manor. The year I became empress, I stripped Mo Feng of his title and position on charges of colluding with princes to plot rebellion and forming factions for private gain. The entire family was exiled to the distant south. I still remember the moment I transmigrated. It was the exact instant the original owner of this body died. The ones who harmed her were her legitimate mother and legitimate sister, while the one who aided and abetted them was her own biological father who turned a blind eye. Now I have avenged her a little. I hope she can rest in peace and be reborn into a blessed family in her next life, with loving parents and harmonious siblings. Right now, everything in my life is perfect. I hope she can find her own perfection as well. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.